Hi everybody, it's Clare Stead here from the UK, and thank you to ECDF for giving me the opportunity to be able to share with you my presentation all about baby brain building playfully. Now I'm going to need to be able to share my screen if I can, if you can enable that please, ECDF, and then we'll get going. Let's see, here we go. We're on. We're getting organized. So let's get our slides up. Hopefully they will be coming to you any minute now. Hopefully you can see the slides and we can get going. It's super nice to be here, and I want to tell you all a story about a new mum, a first-time mum. And she was a professional right at the top of her game. She was really excited to become a mum, and but she had never held a baby before. She had kind of had no experience of having a baby other than being a baby herself. And she went to hospital. She had her baby. She had the baby in the morning, and by the afternoon she was home. And she had no real support or network to help her along her journey. Her partner was the same. He was professional, top of his game, again, no experience of babies. And after the birth, they found that they were trying the hardest to do the best for their baby. But to be honest, they had little or no experience, and they didn't know what the best was. And so they carried on and they did their best, but they found themselves going slightly downhill. And in the end, what she found was, whenever she did her baby's nappy changing, her baby cried. So what she ended up doing was getting more and more efficient at nappy changing and trying to make the process as short as possible. What she didn't realize, because how would you realize if you didn't know these things, was that she was missing out on some amazing brain building opportunities in these tiny daily activities that she was doing with her baby. And what it meant was that she wasn't she wasn't connecting with her baby in that really meaningful way, in the way that she could have been. And it meant that her baby was missing out on these brain building opportunities. And the thing is that when we become new parents, no one tells us what to do. No one really is there to support us on our journey. And nobody really gives us we spend a lot of time developing an understanding of how to give birth, but we don't give a lot of time in understanding how to parent in order to be able to support and build and develop our baby's development for life and for the rest of life, and to do that playfully. And then I was talking to a nursery, a daycare consultant, and she had got really frustrated because she had been working in the nursery. She'd been going backwards and forwards throughout the day into the baby room, and she kept coming into the baby room and finding the baby room workers holding babies, but having a chat over the top of the babies. And they weren't interacting with the babies. They weren't giving any, making any brain building moments for those babies. And she was really frustrated to see how they were wasting these opportunities that were there for this baby development. So during this session, what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of simple tools that you can use to change either your home, if you're a parent, and the way that you communicate with your baby. And if you're a nursery, I want to show you some tools that may transform the way that you're working. If it doesn't transform the way you're working, it's certainly going to remind you of the best practice that you can implement in your classrooms and in your nurseries and your home to support baby brain building as we go through. So, we're live. Yes, we are. So, in this session, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the importance of these critical first 1,000 days, and I'm going to share with you why that's so important. I'm then going to show you this model to develop confident child-focused interactions in everything you do. It's just something to have front of mind. And then I'm going to give you some really actionable steps that you can take away today. So if we've not met before, I'm Clare Stead. I am a primary school teacher, an education researcher, an e-learning specialist, and a mum of 3 now bigger children. I've taught on 3 continents around the world, And I got really sick of seeing too many children arrive in school and not thrive. I wondered what made the difference between the child that arrived and thrived and just absorbed all the learning that I could give them, and the child that really struggled to connect with the learning that was taking place. I also realized that behind most failing children were parents who felt a lot alone, lost, and quite possibly judged. And I thought that was really unjust, that because we're not supporting parents in the early days in the way that we could, because we're not building babies' brains in the way that we could in the earliest days, these children arrive at school and don't thrive. And what this journey took me on was a journey to discover, where did the change happen? Because when these babies were toddlers, the child who arrives and thrives and the child who doesn't thrive arrived and were equally as captivated by a caterpillar on a leaf or a snail walking along the grass. They were both focused. What happened? At what point did one of those children carry on absorbing everything and just thriving and just going with all the learning that we give them, and the other switched off and found amazing capabilities for avoiding work and doing everything in their power not to achieve what we want them to achieve in school? I went on an adventure to find out what was happening and when it was happening, and what I found out was so fundamentally important that it completely transformed and shaped my career from there on in. I went off and I built the Aliki app. It's an app for parents from conception to 2 to build babies' brains and to spark their confidence as a parent, one play activity at a time. When that mum I told you about at the beginning got the app, she said, I almost instantaneously felt better because I now know what I'm doing, and I know I'm doing it right, and I know what to do, and now I can breathe. The first professionals that parents come up to who know about child development, parents arrive and are involved with, is very often in our nurseries and daycare centres. And because the Aliki app starts from conception and goes right up to 2, nurseries are now using the Aliki app to support their parents in the sign up before they go to nursery. So once they've signed up to say, I want to come to nursery, I'm still pregnant, the baby hasn't arrived, nurseries are giving the Aliki app to their parents so that the parents can start on their journey of understanding the power of play for baby brain building, but also understand the impact that they have on their children's outcomes. But also we know that one area that nurseries are really struggling with and challenged with is under their staff understanding the importance and the way that child development takes place and using play to enhance that development. So nurseries are also using the Aliki app to help support their staff's understanding of play for development, because each activity in the Aliki app explains what the children is learning, what the child is learning from the activity, the why, and also the science and the research behind that learning. So upskilling staff and parents at the same time. And because it's mapped the early years curriculum, the EYFS, the early years foundation stage curriculum, we know that it's covering all areas of learning for the child. But let me tell you about these incredible first 1,000 days and why we need to be so passionate about building babies' brains in the earliest of days, and how the Aliki app can support that development through play. The first 1,000 days, that's the time from conception to 2, are the most critical in your child's life for development. Yet, most of us have no idea or no understanding about them. It's when this first 1,000 days is when the baby's brain is developing faster than at any other time in their life. And it starts from really early on. By about week 8 after conception. The brain is forming about 250,000 neurons, that's the connections, per minute in the brain, and they already have brain waves detectable. By 24 weeks pregnant, so we're still pregnant, the baby can hear muffled sounds and begins to start forming a bond with their parents. And at times during that first 1,000 days, in that first year, more than 1 million synapse connections a second are being created. By the time a baby's 3, their brain is about 90% developed. And although their brain won't be fully formed until they're 25, 26-ish, you can see that these first 1,000 days from this graph are fundamental for the development of our children's learning. We start from before birth with our learning, and we start with the simple. We start with the sensory development in this first year, and then we build on that sensory development. We build our language pathways, and at the same time, we're beginning to build our higher cognitive development, which is things like our critical thinking, our inquiry, our investigation, our creativity, all those fabulous things we want for our babies are peaking before the end of the first 1,000 days. That's the time when the baby is 2. And then everything comes down and carries on trundling along down the bottom here from there on in until they're about 25, 26. The brain is plastic, it is always learning, but this period of time is a fundamental period of time for development. We are constantly learning more and more about this first 1,000 days. And we know that what happens during this time impacts children's life outcomes, from the jobs they're going to do, their resilience, their creativity, their problem solving, their ability to think, investigate, inquire, as well as their health, their mental health, their physical health, how much they earn, their academic outcomes, and even, and possibly most importantly, their relationships that they will have in life. It is a critical time in our lives. Now, babies are developed through a foundation of relationships. We need our babies to have these amazing relationships. They learn from the experiences we give them, whether they're good or bad experiences. And when we provide babies with gorgeous, warm, loving, nurturing, responsive relationships, they feel secure and connected. And when they have that, then they're able to build these amazing neural pathways and connections in the brain, and therefore they're then able to have all the tools in place to be able to reach their full potential. When the environment that they're born into is less than ideal, that literally negatively impacts their development. Less than ideal circumstances are often described as adverse childhood effects, or ACEs, and they are highly stressful and potentially traumatic events that or situations that occur during childhood, and they can be either a single event, a one-off event, or a really prolonged threat. And some examples of this are things like physical or sexual abuse, or emotional abuse, living with someone who abuses drugs or alcohol, exposure to domestic violence, living with someone who's gone to prison or has a serious mental health illness, or losing a parent through divorce or splitting of the relationship, death or abandonment. Now, when one or more of these ACEs happen, this thing called toxic stress develops, and when that happens, it literally can stop a baby from developing properly in the way that it does. It changes the cell biology and the way that the cells are being formed and constructed. So toxic stress, we want to avoid toxic stress, and research shows that but stress is good, but not toxic stress. We want some gentle stressors that are easily resolved. But research shows that the first 2 months, the first 60 days after birth, are crucial and a unique period of time. In his recent book, I've got it here actually, what happened to you, I don't know if you can see that, is in his recent book, written with Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Bruce Perry states that when you compare a child who experiences adverse effects in the first 2 months of life and then goes on to lead a normal, healthy life, with a child who is born into an environment of adverse effects and then goes on to have, so we've got a child, first child being born into a normal life for 2 months and then going on to adverse effects, and a second child being born into adverse effects and then going on to have a normal life. When you compare those two children, the child that was born into early negative experiences fares worse in all areas of development than those who had just 2 months of great start to life. Ultimately, having strong negative experiences early prevents children from being able to really easily fully develop to their full potential. The protector for babies is this, in this crucial early days, in this unique period of time, is this strong, responsive, nurturing, loving relationship with at least one adult. So, most often, parents are that trusted carer. But when a child is brought to daycare or nursery, they also need a trusted carer there too. And that's the role of the key worker, or the person who's nominated to look after that baby. Although all the adults who work with our youngest children need to provide safe spaces and loving, nurturing places for the children, it's that key worker who needs to be the responsive, loving, consistent, nurturing adult in order for the child to thrive. Now, if we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can't begin to learn and develop all the things that we want our children to develop, all these wonderful things, unless we have built this environment of security for our children, with that sense of strong sense of loving and responsive nurturing. In case you're not aware, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you work from the bottom up, and in order to be able to access the next layer, you need to have this base layer in place. So it is very low down in our needs that we need this. It's very embedded that we need this loving, nurturing environment. So what does that mean in practice? What are the key things that key workers or parents can do to provide babies with an environment that feels safe and trusting and nurturing for them? Well, first up, we need to consider the world they're entering. From the home or our nursery or daycare setting, from that viewpoint, we need to consider it from the child's point of view, and in the case of the nursery, also the viewpoint of the parent. Because if the parent's not at ease in the environment, the child is going to sense that and pick up on the parent's discomfort. And this is going to give the child a sense of fear and mistrust. I think something like 70% of all communication is nonverbal. So the parent may not be saying, I feel uneasy, but the child will feel and sense that unease. So you need to ask yourself, does the environment feel welcoming and calm and nurturing in this, where we are? Or is it overwhelming? Is it cluttered or overly curated? Are resources suitable for the age of the children in the room, and are they accessible? Is there a sense of can do in this room? Or is this an environment where children need to ask first before doing things? Is it a place of exploration and creativity and adventure? Asking this sort of question is going to show you the tone of the environment that the baby is being brought into. As a practitioner, are we welcoming and open and warm? Or are we just a little bit too enthusiastic, overbearing and dominant? Or conversely, are we actually too timid and quiet? How we conduct ourselves to both the children and the parents will impact on how the child and the parents view the space and the environment in which they are entering. So here's a little task for you to do. If just take a moment, you can consider the environment that you provide. Walk through it with really fresh eyes, as if you're seeing that space for the first time. Ask others their opinion and hear what they have to say. Jot down what you actually see in your environment. And then take action. Consider the space from the eyes of a brand new parent, leaving their brand new baby with you for the very first time. How does it feel? And as a parent, really think about your home environment and the space that you share with your baby. What feeling are you providing for your baby? Is it chaotic? Is it frenetic? Or is it calm and loving and supportive? Consider your role as a trusted carer. It's the singularly most important element in providing baby brain building support for both the child and your care and the parents in your nursery. If you and your staff do your job as early years educators in the baby room well, and if you as a parent feel really confident in the interactions you're having with your baby and the things that you're doing with them each day, you can help the children in your care lay really strong foundations which will set them on a trajectory of success. Because we know that children's development, just 22 months old, have been shown to predict their qualification outcomes at 26 years. They need to learn, babies need to learn everything. And although this seems super easy to understand, it's really worth unpicking what that actually means. Babies need to learn to see, to hear, to feel, to know what happens when you interact with things, and also how to feel secure, how to build relationships, how their bodies work, how their bodies fit in space, how to learn the language with which they're going to communicate. And then any academic material that we intend to teach them. Harvard's Centre on the Developing Child talk about the first 1,000 days as building the foundations in a house, where you build really strong foundations and then the walls go up really nicely and you can put the wiring in it. It's all set out brilliantly and the lights work and everything fits together, and then the roof goes on nicely. I like to think of it more like a pyramid, where we're building foundations in this pyramid, and each brick is the foundation for the next brick. Each brick needs to be a similar height. The next layer sits on top of the initial brick. Those initial bricks are the foundation for the next layer, and that is repeated for each next layer until we reach the top of the pyramid, where everything is supporting that top of the pyramid. That's exactly what we want for our children and their learning. We want strong, broad, firm foundations of learning, so they have a wide variety of rich experiences with those responsive carers, forming the foundation of all their experiences going forward. Each layer of learning is developed simultaneously rather than having one area that goes up. So, for example, you might get a child who's brilliant at kicking a football, and they practice and they practice and they get really good beyond other experiences at kicking a football. What we're really wanting is the experience in all areas to be about the same level. And we often see parents thinking they're doing a great job by encouraging their children to learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but they haven't really learned them. They've only learned to say them all, rote learning. They haven't got the deep, deep understanding of the oneness of one and the two-ness of two. So what we're looking for is to provide this rich environment of learning for our babies. At each tiny increment is another brick in the building of the pyramid, so that we know that babies have the best, are able to learn, and we know that babies are able to learn best through their interactions and their play. Now, in the nursery, as key workers and trusted people, our babies and children's lives, we need to ensure that we are working. I don't know if this is going to play. Should we see if it plays? Yeah, there we go. We are working with the individual's child's development in our minds. Now, all development happens in the brain. Obviously, other parts of the body are involved, but the brain is the driver of all of that, that learning and the experiences and processing what's taking place. The experiences we offer are the opportunities for the brain to learn and develop these neural pathways. And as we interact and play, we literally build those neural pathways. We light them up and they start connecting. These connections that we can see here, these are what we are building. We're connecting these neurons together when we have our meaningful interactions and experiences. We are literally constructing babies' brains. Now, I'm going to give you a really simple formula to help you think through each of your interactions with your babies and toddlers in your baby room, and so that you can know that they are beginning to be brain building experiences. Now, this strategy works just as well at home as it does in the nursery. It's called the Aliki formula, and you'll see why in a minute. So let's go through it together. We'll start, if you're in the nursery and you work with more than one child, start with the individual child in mind in everything you are doing. So hang on a sec. Let's go on. Let's not play. There we go. So here we go. The Aliki formula. We're going to start by observation, observing. So what we're going to do is we're going to observe our babies really closely. What are they specifically interested in right now? Look for the details, get into the details, look and watch without interrupting, without what specifically are they showing an interest in? Ask yourself, what were they interested in yesterday? Later on, ask yourself, what are they interested in this afternoon? Really look and see, where is their gaze? What are they interested in? What are they focusing in? What are they doing? Where are they spending their energy? And what repeated actions are they doing? So we're going to observe. Then the second step is we're going to focus on your learning. You are going to need to learn what this baby or child is telling you. All babies are born communicating. We just need to tune into their communications. So what are they telling you with their eyes, their hands, their voice, their cry? See if you can tune in enough to be able to tell the differences between each of their communication methods. How many communication methods are they using? How many can you understand and hear and receive information from? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to investigate. Now we need to really investigate their interest. Follow their lead. Try and see where they are specifically focused in their area of current fascination. Is it the movement? Is it the sound? Is it the visual stimulation, the texture they're experiencing? What is it that is captivating them? Go deep in your interest of their interest. Watch and learn. And it's only in active watching that we learn most. And only after watching should we initiate conversation. So there's a lot that goes in before we go in with any form of verbal communication. Following their lead, develop a conversation around their areas of interest. What activity, specific language can you share and provide them with in a really natural way? What questions can you ask them to scaffold their learning and take their play to the next level? What conversations can you provoke? Leave a space for their response, regardless of their ability to answer, because they will answer in their own way. And you'll be able to understand the communication if you're tuned in. Make sure you are tuned in enough to hear and understand what they're saying. This is known as being in attunement or being attuned. It's their answer that leads you to know how to scaffold the next interaction that you have and that they need. In babies, song is a brilliant form of conversation. So use song often and repetitively. The next step is to kindle connection. It's in the connection where we build that sense of safety. It's developed from where your children are, where safety is developed, and it's where children are able to thrive and begin to learn. Remember Maslow? When children and babies are connected, they are able to take risks. They're able to inquire. They're able to investigate and make developmental leaps that we are really wanting. But they need to feel that connection. They need that sense of security before their brain is open and able to access learning. Learning happens in like a triangle, and they have to get through the base of the triangle to the thinking brain, and that connection is where we give security so that they can access, that's the word I'm looking for, the thinking brain. So the final step is to instill a love of learning. Allow their interests to become your current interests. Allow their passion to become your passions. Modeling intrigue and fascination and focus and concentration will enable the children in your care to copy our behaviours. Each day and all day, are you present and connected? Are you exploring and investigating? Are you being creative and intrigued? What you model, your children will repeat. And with the brain that's developing over 1 million synapse connections a second, we need to ensure that what we model is amazing and useful and gives children tiny skills to be the foundation for the next tiny skill. Use the Aliki formula every day and you'll be starting to really build those babies' brains. So now let's get some actionable steps you can use today in your daycare or nursery or with your baby at home. So, nurseries, connect with your parents. Don't be frightened of them. They are the expert in their child. You are the expert in the child's development. Together with their child, you're a powerhouse of developmental support for their child. Bring the learning that happens in your nursery into the home, and likewise the nursery that happens at home, the learning that happens at home into the nursery. Make sure the activities that you do are repeatable and seamless. Use tools to help you do it easily. Tools like, there are other tools, but tools like the Aliki app that start right from the start, give you activities that are both age appropriate, easy to do, and build tiny skill on tiny skill to build that strong foundation for the bigger skills we're wanting our children and babies to master. Using the app in both nursery and home sends a strong message to parents that you care about parents and their children and supporting them to support their child's development at home. And it also sends a strong message that you care about their learning happening at home and in the nursery. But it also ensures you give your children a rich diet of learning across all areas of learning. And what it also does is it means that you are gaining children with stronger, firmer foundations that you can build on in your nursery. So then you can provide that child with consolidation and stretch in their learning, which means that they will reach their full potential, which is what this is all about. Remembering that at 22 months, our academic outcomes are a good predictor of our academic outcomes at 26 years. So the foundations we lay in the earliest of days, the better the outcome's going to be. Parents, remember, you've got a massive role to play in your child's development. Even if your child is at childcare full time, they spend approximately 80% of time with you. What you do with them really matters. Don't think you should do it alone. Don't think you need to buy toys or sit them down with a pen and paper. It's not about that. all happens through tiny moments of interaction, of play, of conversation, all the things I've been talking about today. And if you don't know what to do, use tools like the Aliki app that will help and support you in your journey into parenting, so that you feel really confident about what you are trying to achieve with your child. And when you're doing nappy changing, like that mum at the beginning that I talked about, rather than rushing through it and being efficient and just getting the nappy changed, you can make nappy changing, diaper changing into a really brain building moment, because you build the connection and you use that moment playfully. And the Aliki app will show you how to do things like that and explain why it is a brain building moment. So then you feel confident, and because you feel confident, guess what happens? Your baby picks up on your confidence, and your baby feels confident, and then they can start growing and developing. Again, think of Maslow. The next actionable step is to plan for engagement. Nurseries, look closely at your planning for engagement with the children in your care. Are all the practitioners using the same strategies to deliver engagement, such as the Aliki formula or something else like similar? Are you able to easily tell anyone who asks what each child and baby in your care is currently focused and passionate about? This child clearly right now is completely focused and passionate about the person that they're chatting to. You know there's no words going on in that conversation, but you know, and you can see and you can feel the connection that's happening. But look at what the hands are doing. Look at what the body is doing. We need to read the whole of the baby, not just the obvious. How closely are you listening to each baby and what they're saying and doing? If you don't know, don't stress. Just go back to that to revisit the child and start from that formula of connection again. Observe, listen, initiate, investigate, kindle, and instill that love of learning. If you follow it, you will cover the basic areas for connection and development. Parents, you are the specialist in your child. Share what your baby is currently interested in with your nursery and daycare. Ask what they've been focusing on today when you pick them up. Take an interest in what goes on in the nursery each day, and it will help you know what to focus in on at home. And if they've been using the Aliki app, that's a great way where they can say, oh, we did this today, you can go home and do more of it, because babies learn through repetition, and the more that we do the same stuff, the more we build those neural connections that I was showing you earlier. The next thing is celebrating the team's tiny wins. Nurseries, have you shared what tiny wins happened today in your world? What tiny win did you have today? Is there a space in your nursery and your childcare environment to share tiny wins? Do you give priority to sharing tiny wins? Parents, have you reflected on your tiny wins today? What have you done well? They might be really, really simple and seem pointless. Like it might be, I drank a cup of coffee and it was hot. I remember to pick up my dry cleaning on the way home. I had a lovely chat with parent A, B, and C at pickup. Whatever the tiny win is, celebrate it to the full and share it with someone to make it really real. These tiny wins are the building blocks to big wins. And it's those tiny wins that build our confidence and our understanding in what we're doing and in our development in this new role that we've taken on as parents or in our role as childcare provider. The next thing is nurseries is sharing the power of tiny wins with parents. Nurseries, have you shared each child's tiny win with their parents? Have you shared a pickup or whatever happened today that was a tiny win for that child? And I mean tiny win. They smiled. They held something in the left hand and they passed it to the right hand. When we know about child development, we know that that's a key development marker, but it's also something that takes a long time. Maybe they didn't manage to do it. Maybe it was just they tried to pick up, to collect it for the other hand. We're looking, if we're tuned in, we're looking for these tiny wins and we're able to find them. Celebrating the tiny wins gives status to tiny developments. Those tiny developments that happen every single day, because babies are developing really fast in these first 1,000 days. And it's these tiny wins are how we build babies' brains, noticing them and building on them. And it's heaps and heaps of tiny wins that we get to the big wins, to the milestones of standing or sitting and walking. But there's a long gap between being able to sit up and being able to walk. And so there's not that sort of stroke of success that we really want and crave. So by finding the tiny wins and celebrating those, we're able to see the tiny incremental development as it happens. And there's massive power in finding those tiny brain building moments and celebrating them. And if you're not sure what the developmental successes and tiny wins were, again, the Aliki app makes that really easy to know. This one's a big one. At the end of the day, reflect on what the playful adventures happened today. Like, ask yourself, whose playful adventure was it? Mine? The child's? The nursery's? The parents'? Or someone else's? Think back to those nursery workers from the first story I told you that were holding the babies and talking over the top of the babies' heads. In that story, it's the nursery nurses who are having the learning adventure. The babies are isolated and unstimulated. There is no learning adventure happening for babies. And if it is, it's not being received and captured and nurtured into the next phase. So if that baby sitting on the knee of the nursery nurse had been fascinated by the leaf moving outside in the garden, no one was going to build on that and build the baby's brain, because they were tuned into their own learning adventure happening in their communication with each other. And so we can get caught up in what we're doing, and that's natural. But what we need to do is, if we reflect at the end of the day whose learning adventure it was, and we track that, we might be quite surprised by the outcomes if we're truly honest. It's a really powerful thing to do, but it needs honesty. And therefore we need to make a safe environment to be able to be honest, so that it becomes a learning environment for us all, because when we're all learning, we're all growing and developing. Using the Aliki method that I told you earlier ensures that you bring that play and learning and development back to the child in their current needs and interests in a really clear way that ensures that brain building is happening. Now, the science shows us that this first 1,000 days really, really matters. And what we do with it is huge. What we do with it every hour, every interaction, has the ability to be brain building for the children and babies in our care. So what actions are you going to take to help the babies in your care playfully? Thank you to ECDF for the opportunity to speak to you all. It's super lovely to be here. This is the first in a series of training. If you want to know more training, know about the training that's coming, then may I suggest that you jump onto my website and you join my newsletter, because then I can tell you about trainings that are coming up. If you're a parent and you would like to use the Aliki app in your parenting, you can get it from the App Store, download it. It's free for 7 days, and after that it's $4.99 a month. And then if you are interested in exploring whether or not the Aliki app would be useful for your school, please do get in touch with me on my email here, and I'd be more than happy to fill you in on how that works. And otherwise, please follow me on socials. It's we're all over the place, but the ones that I mainly use are Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And connect with me. Let me know where you're coming from and what your role is, because it's always lovely to hear about the journey that you're going on and the children that you are working with and how you are building their brains. Thank you so much for your time.